morning, everybody. Thank you for joining again for my repeat participants. I'm Katie Shorey. For those who haven't met me yet, Startup Maine's president. Thank you for joining. This is our 13th session of the Ecosystem Builders and Entrepreneurs Speaker Series. These events feature thinkers and doers from across the state who are working on and building some awesome companies and products. And today's event would not be possible without our sponsors, Bangor Savings Bank, Maine Technology Institute, Maine Venture Fund, and Maine Angels. And a quick shout out to our sponsors as they make this all possible. For those who don't know, Maine Technology Institute was founded and funded in 1999 by the Maine State Legislature, and they offer grants, loans, equity investments, and services to support Maine's innovation economy. And they support new ideas, products, or methods that have the potential to grow and diversify Maine's economy and increase the number of jobs. And they also help to promote innovation and entrepreneurship through event sponsorship like this series. So we thank them. They have been such a supportive partner over the years. To learn more and to find out if you're eligible for funding, visit mainetechnology.org. And we are also supported by Maine Venture Fund. The mission of MVF is to invest in dynamic businesses that have the potential for significant growth and impact in Maine. And I'm excited to welcome our newest sponsor, the Maine Angels. Maine Angels are accredited equity investors who help entrepreneurs by investing in and mentoring early stage companies. Their goal is to make sound investments in promoting New England entrepreneurs with an emphasis on scalable Maine companies. Alrighty, and then I just have one short video. Bear with me.
All across New England, business owners are finding new ways to succeed. Families are working hard to provide for their loved ones and their future. It's the spirit of New Englanders that inspires all of us to do more. It's in our employees, our customers, and our communities. Every day we do more. Because at Bangor Savings Bank, we truly believe you matter more.
Alrighty, so today we have the chat open. If anyone wants to say hello, check in where you're calling from, but I'm only going to be monitoring. Oh, there was no audio. I'm so sorry. I just played a video that had no audio. That was my mistake. I'm so sorry. I will edit that in. Thank you, Scott. Geez, I'm already messing up on a Wednesday morning at 8:30. So today I'm only going to monitor the Q&A. So if you have a question specifically about for Helkin, please put it in the Q&A as that's what I will be monitoring. So we'll jump right in. I am so excited for today's session. We have with us today Helkin Berg, the CEO of Strimo. Welcome, Helkin.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
So tell us about yourself and your background.
Sure. So I have been in tech for the majority of my career and mainly for startups. So my sweet spot is usually between 0 and 100 employees and 0 revenue up to about 20 million. Most of my career has, partly through planning and partly through luck, has been for international SaaS companies. So even while living here in Maine, all of them have had a global orientation. And what I especially like to do are the really exciting growth stages for companies, what I call the doublings, when you go from your 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, and keep on going up till you've hit a really well-established, well-built out company. Before being in my current industry is cannabis, it's cannabis tech. I've been in a few others. I've had good luck to have clients around the globe as well as teams around the globe. I've managed groups ranging from Singapore to Costa Rica to California to Chicago. So well before COVID, I've been working and managing distributed teams. So it's actually been as hard as this past year, or I guess now, year and a half has been for everyone. I will say there's been a silver lining seeing so many teams succeed as in their distributed form. I think it's a really exciting opportunity, especially for companies in Maine, to take advantage of that. I'm sure we'll get into that as we talk through everything, but I think it's something that I've enjoyed doing. And if anyone on the call ever wants to just chat about that and the successes I've seen and also the challenges, I think it's a really great format. I also think it can be a very great format if you're looking to increase diversity and equity in your own company. So there's a lot to discuss there, but I'm happy to chat with anyone about that specifically.
We will jump into some of those things later for sure. So tell us, what is Strimo? Because I think a lot of folks might not know who you are or what you're doing.
Yeah, so Strimo is an ERP system for the cannabis industry. So an ERP is an enterprise resource planning software. So I think one thing that I'll just say to start is cannabis is talked about as one industry, but realistically, it's many industries rolled into one. You have agriculture, you have manufacturing, you have distribution, there's pharmaceutical aspects, and then you have a retail aspect. And all of that together is cannabis. And then you have to also lay into that the complexities of the legal landscape. It's constantly evolving. In the US, we're making a lot of progress in terms of legalization, but it's still only at the state level. In other countries, it is at the national level, but still very restricted and often cases, medical only. So all of this leads to a company that needs to manage its people, manage its assets, which in this case is the cannabis plants and all the cannabis byproducts, and the finished goods that come from that, as well as all the processes. So our software manages all of that. It manages the people, the process, and the products, and it manages it from when a seed goes into the ground for a plant all the way to a finished good. And it makes the data really easy for operators to see and understand and make informed decisions. And I think most critically is it also handles the compliance aspect. And so compliance in cannabis means reporting on the goods you have up in the US. It's up to the state level. In Canada, it's provincial and the national level, and other countries as well. And it's also compliance in terms of health and safety, right? All the processes you have, and the good manufacturing practices you have. So we manage all of that through the software, which saves operators incredible amounts of time, and also makes their businesses much more secure and scalable.
Wow. So how large, remind us, how large is your team?
So our team's growing. We actually just started with our launch of the product in June of 2019, and we've been growing ever since. We've actually hired on a whole handful of people in COVID that I have yet to meet in person. So that's been, frankly, it's been really fun to welcome them into the team, and I can't wait to get everyone together once it becomes a little bit easier to travel around.
So tell us a day in the life for you, because I know you've been a leader at many companies. So just like from your perspective, what's a day in the life of being an entrepreneurial leader?
So my answer is probably not going to be different than a lot of other entrepreneurs. Every day is different. When I'm fundraising, that's 20 to 40% of my time. When, we're not, I'm focused on everything from operations to sales to product. I think what I'll just lend in just to give a bit of like the non-business and just the human element is I have a super supportive partner. He knows the drill. He's been through a whole handful of companies with me. And, we basically have it down to a code and a science. Like if I have to hop on something like this and I need to be at my computer for an early AM call or up super late to talk to Australia at night, like he's got me covered and he's got the kids covered. I have 3 kids at home. So I think that frankly, for me, like I am successful at what I do because I have that high level of support. So for entrepreneurs that are at the beginning or people that are potentially thinking of starting their own thing, I think you really have to look at your own system in your own life and figure out, what supports you have and maybe where you need some more, because you can't do it without it. I frankly wouldn't have been able to do this without that level of support.
Thanks for that honest answer. It's something that doesn't get talked enough about, for sure. So let's talk a bit about why Strimo needs to exist. Like how did that all come about? And you're clearly, you're scaling. So let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I think one important aspect to bring up, because this can be a path for a lot of entrepreneurs, is I'm actually not the founder. So there was a great founder who was an early operator in the cannabis business, saw a need in the market for a specific software. I think he was way ahead of his time in terms of what he saw. And we paired up because my background's in SaaS software and in technology. And so, with the investors together, we came to grow and scale the company. So as far as why now, I'd say cannabis is a very nascent market, even though, you will meet people that have been in for, at this point, maybe a decade. Those are considered people who've been around for a really long time. It's just starting up. And so as a part of that, there have been very limited software offerings to date. And I call those first generation softwares. And the opportunity we have in Strimo is to be what's considered second generation software. So learn from all the mistakes, frankly, of the early entrants. Like they did a good job to just get out there and be in the market. But frankly, there's a lot of shortcomings when you're in that position. And for me, in my background, I've often been the second or third generation solution that comes to market. And, it's a really great position to be in because the market's been created. You have a user base actively out there. They're dissatisfied with what they're using and they're looking for a better solution. And that's exactly what Strimo is. It's like, we know you need this, you need this, and
Mhm.
here's why our offering is actually going to accelerate your business.
Thanks. That's helpful. So, okay, so you are in 5 countries, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and you're set up to operate in all 50 states, which I think is
In
very
the legal
exciting.
state. Yeah, it's not all 50 yet, but where it's legal in the US.
Okay, so I want to talk about like your thoughts on funding and money and how and invest more specifically investors. But first, I would love your thoughts on like why Maine and like and you're in Maine. Just tell us your thoughts on why that is helpful and I don't know, just any just thoughts about that.
Sure. So for me, I mean, Maine was a personal decision. I just wanted to live here, and this is where I wanted to raise a family. As far as pairing that together with a tech startup and an early stage company and a more mature company, even, I feel like there are more people in Maine already doing it than I think even those of us here even realize. We bump into each other in airports. I know COVID's made it a bit difficult, but I would run into people all the time in terminals. They were, jetting down to New York weekly, daily, sometimes even. And, same with me, I was off to cities so frequently, and it was really fun to meet people doing the same thing I was doing. So I'd say for anyone considering moving here for this, there are actually a lot of us already here. And I think I feel there's this palpable momentum gaining in the community where we're all finding each other and connecting more and more. But as far as the advantages of Maine, I mean, there's some obvious things. If you're involved in the blue economy, there's tremendous assets here in Maine around that. And that's a really big field. There's lots of ways you can take that. Veterinary sciences are extremely strong here. We're a continuation of the biotech corridor from, Boston on up. I mean, there's a lot of strengths to the location based on tangential and nearby assets and people, but frankly I also just think lifestyle, right? So if you want people who want to be innovative, but also want a really high quality of life, I mean, that's what Maine offers. I think I, in a way, was kind of doing it before it was cool. I think COVID's made it really cool to like live where you want and do what do the work you love. And I will say there's been advantages. So sometimes when you're outside of Silicon Valley, like so much of, my peer companies are born out of that area, the Bay Area. I think it's really, really healthy to have the opportunity to see things through a different lens, because there can be a lot of hype cycles in that setting. There's a lot of advantages too, right? There's a lot of talent there, but there's also the ability to kind of take a long range view over what tech is and can be. And also, frankly, from a hiring perspective. So if people are thinking about where to expand their teams in the Bay Area, frankly, it's kind of a point of pride to cycle on your resume every 2 years. And for me, growing and expanding a company, I'm looking to invest a lot of time into my people. They're the most important aspect of my company. I want to know that if we're making it work and it's something they enjoy, that they're going to be interested in staying, right? Because it's a huge investment for me. So just something to think about as people think about where to expand their teams.
Helpful. Yes, thank you. So, okay, so let's talk a bit about like your thoughts on investors and the funding side of things. So I would just be curious about how if you're in the middle of a round or if you're thinking about fundraising. One, how are you going to handle that differently this time? And then let's talk about fundraising or raising money in the cannabis market, because I just feel like it might be a little different than than what challenges other people face. So yeah.
Some of it will be the same as others, and there probably are a few things that are a bit wilder with cannabis. So I've had both experiences. I've bootstrapped companies and raised, and I feel like it's a really great if founders can have both skill sets, because I think they come into play at all times. It makes you really cash wise, and also very prudent in how you make decisions. I think if you only had the experience where you've had abundant amounts of funding, you can have a very different viewpoint on what passive growth makes sense. So right now, yes, cannabis is hot. Money is, people have, they're looking to allocate, and in particular to tech. So we don't touch the actual cannabis plant. There still are some investors that are hesitant to get into that. And also their funds may be restricted. They may have vice clauses where they can't actually invest into cannabis. So we as tech are a sort of a safe haven. That said, we have a really dedicated group of original investors who really understand our business and understand our industry, and we're really looking for strategic partners. And I think that's
Mhm.
been, frankly, a privilege I've had, is to be very particular about where we go next, because capital isn't actually the issue. It's like, who's a strategic partner to help grow the company. And I can just say to other founders, that's a great place to be, right? Because you get to actually analyze who's coming to the table, and what advantages they're going to bring to growing your business. Because cannabis, because of the the tumult in cannabis, a lot of operators are rightly distrustful. So what happens with that when software comes in is, they really want to know, who are you and why should I trust you? I've already tried two other software vendors. They burned me. What really makes you different? I get you're saying it, but show me. And so with that, investors that can open the door and help build that trust and say, yeah, this team really will stick by you no matter what, which is what Strimo does, right? We really are there every step of the way with our clients. That's helpful to us. So it's been, for me, a great experience to be able to have these open conversations about really, like, how are we going to help each other and make this a great success.
Yes, that's that's awesome. So, do you have in your industry, are there specific struggles that you're facing compared to like a different type of tech product?
Yeah, I would say there's some things that I would say are sort of cannabis specific, and it has to do with the investor level of familiarity with cannabis. I think what's greatly underestimated for people on the outside of cannabis is just how you have an entire industry, not an aspect, but literally the entire industry in startup mode. So even the really, really large global players or multi-state players in cannabis, I mean, they're young companies, and they're experiencing all the growth pains that we, like in tech startups, know well. So it's very easy to get caught in numbers only on cannabis, but I think it's important to also really speak to the operators and speak to people in all aspects of the industry itself, because there's a lot to know. And I think the industry as a whole will grow out of it over time.
Mhm.
I put about 5 years on that.
Yeah.
But I just think as both from entrepreneurs and operators and investors looking to get in this space, that they shouldn't underestimate that aspect.
S- So, I want to transition a bit to talking about remote teams and also like why Maine as a location for an international startup, because
Yeah.
we have obviously have some great resources in Maine from like Maine International Trade Center, but also just our location. Um, and I'm curious about your thoughts around a distributed team. And I think there's a question in the chat about this as well. So if we don't answer it through this, I'll ask his question. But yeah,
Yeah,
thoughts
sure.
on that.
So I think for me, the way it's played out, and I have run this by a few other, founders and executives here in Maine, is because in Maine you make the assumption that you need to be open to talent from anywhere. You've already solved a lot of the problems you'd have to solve to go global anyway. So I think there's something in the DNA of companies that start here and are willing to take a distributed approach from the start that better positions them than maybe a company that's dedicated, for example, to only being in Austin, Texas, right? Like 100% of the employees, or maybe something like 98%, they want them there. They're willing to nearshore or offshore some amount, maybe go out of state for a few, critical hires, but that's it. It's going to be a lot harder for them culturally, organizationally, to then think about opening an office in, Bogota. It would just be harder. So I think one advantage I would say is that with Maine is just, frankly, my international clients have really never cared where I am, as long as I'm able to travel to where they are. And I will just give Maine a shout out in that it's actually ridiculously easy to travel out of Maine to places, far more easy than people realize. Like, I would beat my colleagues, out of San Francisco and Chicago all the time to locations, because I can hop down to New York, or I can drive direct to Boston so fast and get on direct flights all over the world. So I think that's something that, frankly, before living here, I wouldn't have thought about. I would have said,
Mhm.
oh, Maine, that's way up in the Northeast. It just mentally it feels more geographically removed than it in reality it is. And also on a cost basis, flights are incredibly reasonable. So for those people that are thinking dollar to dollar, how do I actually facilitate, in a post-COVID world, all the face time that's needed for some business deals.
Yeah.
I actually don't think it's a barrier at all here, and frankly, in some ways, easier, because my cost basis for my travel versus colleagues out of Chicago or other cities was less.
So Tim asks, kind of in this vein, in the remote friendly world, do you believe it's worthwhile to prefer candidates local to a company's headquarter, or should hiring be agnostic of location?
It's a good question. I'd say, frankly, it depends. So it really depends on the company and the product. So for me, in a pure tech product, being agnostic is very easy. I also have the need to have people on the ground in a variety of locations. So I actually need the distribution for building business relations. That said, for a product that has like a fixed production, for actual cannabis operators, then the answer would be no, like all be in one place. So I think that where I find the distribution advantageous is I get all my time zones covered. I get multiple viewpoints. I have people on the ground in a whole variety of locations. I fly everyone together as a team multiple times a year. So there is that in-person time. And I feel like it's really high quality team building time. And there's none of the lost time in commuting and people trying to balance out an in-office culture versus a distributed culture. I think it can all work in multiple ways, but I just feel like if you can stay open-minded on a distributed model, if it's an option for the type of product you have and the services you're offering, for me, it's also let me hire the absolute best people. Like I've had the ability to hire the best people, and it hasn't, because I haven't needed to make them move or require anything around where they are, as long as they can show up and contribute. Frankly, I think it's also been a great way to ensure diversity in the team.
Okay, we need to touch on that because we've had a few questions come in on it, but really quick, just I wanted you to answer if have you utilized resources or tapped into entrepreneurial support orgs in Maine? Like, what's been helpful for you there? And then
So I've there's so much here, and it's so exciting. And frankly, I came into Maine already working for a company outside, or leading a company outside of Maine. So I wasn't necessarily super Maine oriented initially, but I've come to know it's very resource rich. And I think because we are a smaller state, it's extremely accessible, and everyone, I will say, is beyond supportive. So that feeling feels very unique to Maine. It's a community where I have yet to see anyone put anyone else head to head. Like, it's literally like we want everyone to win, and we want everyone across the finish line, and it's phenomenal. For me personally, I've benefited. We have an informal group that's led by some investors here locally. That's called the CEO Roundtable. We meet once a month, and we have a Slack chat channels going, and that's been incredible because it's the peer-to-peer support. It's super shortcut to answers on questions of like, hey, has someone, made this hire lately? And you can float market value. You can float ideas around softwares you're using internally to facilitate things. I mean, just any number of questions, and you get immediate answers. And like if needed, you could drive to meet and have a coffee with them if you wanted to. So it's both informal and formal here in Maine. And I love how personal and accessible it is.
That's awesome. Okay, Marty has asked that they know that you've kept a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion in your work. And why do you think that's so important? And how are you bringing that thinking to your current project? So I know that we've talked a lot about, you and I together have talked a lot about DEI. So just how are you as a CEO thinking about this?
I just think it makes the best teams and the best products. And I feel like, tech can be so centered around a certain profile of person. And, it's very male centered industry. And we can get into a whole variety of reasons as to why, but I feel like, there's just a lot of statistics out there proving that companies that are more diverse and inclusive actually have better results. And I've literally seen that play out. So, whether you're looking at it from, the idea of just equity for the sake of it, or looking at it from a dollar perspective, either way, you're going to say it's the better choice for a company. And I feel like I found people are really loyal, company loyal, and really excited about their work, and really in it for the long haul, which frankly, in these early stage startups, you want people who are really excited about what they do and they feel included and seen. And I would say any company would actually benefit from it. But I think sometimes in startup mode, you're so focused on solving the immediate problems in front of you that the immediacy sometimes trumps these longer term strategies. And I just feel like this is a strategy you can have from day one. Yes, it might take some more effort in how you recruit, where you recruit, but I think those are worthy things to put in place because frankly, it pays off.
Yes. So I think that you've made a great case for Maine, and I think that I'll pick your brain on that later, because Brian asked in the chat, like, putting on your marketing hat, what would be your advice to how to spread this message and attract more startups and more talent to Maine? And there's just clearly a lot happening in the state, but like, what are some other real, like, big ideas that you'd like to see for us to really take it to the next level?
I think so. From the perspective of a founder, the Maine Angel Network and others, other groups that are here, Maine Venture Fund, they're very, very accessible. They will get to know you over time. So whether you come here with an existing job with the idea of starting something in the future, or you're bringing an existing business, either way, the level of familiarity you can get with them, I think I haven't seen that play out in other locations, and I think that's incredible because early stage investments are really about you and your idea. It's both together. So for me, I haven't had to tap that yet, but seeing that play out for my peers, I think that's an incredible opportunity for them. It's incredibly conversational, and it really, everyone's on the journey together, and it keeps investor and founder and operational goals all in alignment. So I'd say that's a really big advantage of Maine.
That's great. Jen asks, as a parent and an entrepreneur, what do you find meaningful for schools to think about when they're innovating?
Well, it really depends what level of school. So I feel like innovative mindset for different ages is, there's a whole bunch of directions I can take that. I think for schools and innovating, frankly, I think representation matters. So if you're bringing in people to speak and teach, tap a woman like me to come in and talk about technology. Make sure that you have people, if you have a coding class or you have, frankly, just any sort of entrepreneurial project, that you're really making an effort to diversify who students are exposed to and different approaches. Because where I've had to make career decisions and ways I've gotten here, frankly, is going to look different than my male peers. And that's just a matter of course. And I hope, years from now, it won't be that way, but it is right now. And that's a great story to share, to sort of empower people to not feel like there's one norm. Like there's many ways to get to one destination, and it might frankly be harder for someone who's not the majority player in a space.
Well, let's end on a high note. So tell us what you're most excited about. It could be for your company, it could be for Maine, it could be for your industry. Like, what are you excited about looking ahead?
I'm excited. So cannabis is the #1 crop in Maine. So we've surpassed every other thing, every other agricultural product. And I think that's going to happen in a lot of states. It's been a super rough time for so many locations with COVID, but frankly, every state, every government is looking for revenue. So I think that's going to greatly accelerate the interest and frankly, the palpability of legalizing cannabis. So I would guess at this point, most people have sort of together agreed their legalization at the federal level and the international level is a matter of time. I just think this is going to accelerate it. It's a job creator. Frankly, I think there's a huge element of social justice involved and just the ability to innovate in smart agricultural tech. And that's an aspect of our software. Smart manufacturing tech, that's an aspect of the Strimo software. So for me as an innovator and an entrepreneur, it's really, really exciting. Also as an employer, I think it's exciting. So I think for Maine, the fact that Maine's part of that, and I feel like we can be part of something that's national and global is extremely exciting.
Well, I agree, and you've totally, opened my eyes to this industry, and I think that you're doing great things, and I'm so glad you're a leader here in Maine. I hope we can meet in person one day. If people wanted to get in touch with you, how would you like them to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. I love meeting new people, whether it's locally or virtually. I think, having a network of people interested either in cannabis or tech or, just fellow entrepreneurs, I'm always open for a chat.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining in today. Our next speaker is David Stone of Forager. He'll be featured on June 2nd. So stay tuned for info on that. And yes, we have some great calendars and stuff in the chat. We have MTI's Clean Tech Innovation Challenge with a $250,000 award. So there's so many exciting things happening in the ecosystem. And I just appreciate everyone calling in for these conversations. So thanks for your time, Helkin. I really appreciate it.
It's nice speaking with you.